did good.
Chow did good.
Hey there, friends. Welcome back to another Legally Armed America video. I'm, of course, Paul Glasgow here, the one and only truth pimp dealing you a vulgar display of logic and reason on a daily basis. You knew I was going to talk about it, right? The verdict in South Carolina. The pre-talk before the George Floyd flash sale. You knew I was going to talk about this. A lot of people, and probably less than what we're probably thinking, will not like what I have to say here today. But I'm going to say it anyway because this is where you guys come for truth. Of course, June 1st, 2026, a Richland County, South Carolina jury delivered a not guilty verdict for 61-year-old Chikei Rick Chow after 8 hours of deliberation. Chow, a hardworking Asian store owner and father, was charged with murder in a 2023 death of 14-year-old Cyrus Carmack-Belton. The jury correctly found reasonable doubt and accepted Chow's claim of self-defense and defense of his son under South Carolina law. The law matters. This wasn't a murder over water bottles. It was over a 98-cent water bottle. No, it wasn't. You know it wasn't. But let me explain. This was, in fact, a responsible father protecting his family from an armed threat in a high-crime environment. I'm going to walk you through those facts.
A guy was in the convenience store. As he was walking out, he was giving looks to my children who are in the front two seats driving their parents home, and he started talking to my son. And then as my husband was getting out of the car, he pulled a gun on him and pointed it right at his heart.
My name is Matthew Masucci. So I was involved in a self-defense incident where I had to display my firearm. I was falsely accused of being the aggressor in that situation. I was charged with 4 felonies and arrested as such. Luckily, I came upon the Attorneys for Freedom shortly after hiring them. My case took a drastic turn. They had footage of the external video at the gas station where the incident occurred that proved my side of the story was the truth. That ultimately led to all my charges being dismissed. The Attorneys for Freedom, they were very transparent with me, informative, patient. They do what's best for their clients, and they did what was best for me. And me and my family are grateful for that.
I'm a paying member of Attorneys on Retainer, and you should be too. Use my code FTATF at sign up and get immediate savings. In May 2023, at the family-owned Xpress Mart Shell gas station on Park Lane Road in Columbia, South Carolina, Chow and his son Andy confronted Carmack-Belton after he was seen handling water bottles at the cooler. Surveillance video from over 39 angles clearly showed the teen removing bottles, and he did put them back. No theft took place. That is a fact. But suspicion was reasonable. Now, we can talk about the Monday morning quarterbacking all we want, but let's look at a couple of facts here. The kid had no money on him. He had a gun on him, but the kid had no money on him. He was collecting 4 water bottles. Oh, he forgot he didn't have any money. So he put them back. Now, if you notice in the video, the mother, that's Mrs. Chow, she picks up on him quickly, right? I mean, this store's in a high crime area. Pattern recognition. It's easy, especially when it happens to you hourly and daily. So she zoned in on him. Cyrus noticed that Mrs. Chow was watching him. He puts the 4 bottles back. Now, I don't know because Cyrus is dead. Pretty sure he was going to steal them. Again, no money. Did have a gun, but no money. Let's be really clear. Still not why he got shot. After being confronted, Cyrus ran. Chow and his son pursued him 130 yards down Springtree Drive toward a ghetto apartment complex. I call it ghetto because it is a trashy, dumpy, crime-ridden complex. During the chase, the teen lost a shoe and tripped multiple times. When they closed the distance, Andy Chow testified that Carmack-Belton pointed a loaded 9mm Taurus pistol with a laser sight directly at him. Andy yelled, that's the son of Chow, Andy yelled a warning, raised his hands, backed away. Rick Chow ordered the teen to drop the gun and fired 1 shot from his legally owned Glock when he refused. The shot struck Cyrus in the back as he was turning to run away, and he died at the scene. Now, to be clear, you following me? It was a foot chase. No gun was drawn during the foot chase the entire way. The whole way. Chow had his firearm in his side. Never drew it. Not at the store, not in the store, not outside the store, not during the run. The boy kept falling. Cyrus kept falling. One shoe flew off and he kept falling. Now, I have to ask, are shoes that important? Because how did a 61-year-old and a 20-something-year-old or 20-year-old Asian man, or two men, manage to close the distance on a 14-year-old black man? Statistically, that's almost impossible. And the young man, Cyrus, was not overweight or diabetic yet. So surely he had probably a good 2 or 3 miles per hour on the two chows who were chasing him. So obviously he had to have continued to fall for those men to be able to close that gap. Because again, it's not normal for that to happen. But here's a crucial point. The gun was recovered right next to Cyrus's body, consistent with him aiming it, then dropping it after being shot. This was not a case of the gun simply falling out early as he was running away and the teen being executed, shot in the back while he was fleeing unarmed for his own safety. The jury heard the testimony in this case, saw the evidence, and they rejected the prosecution's narrative. So what they're trying to say is, I'll lay it out for you if you haven't already seen this. They're trying to say that, oh, he stole a water bottle and then he put it back, right? So he didn't technically steal anything. He took off running for whatever reason. He hadn't stolen anything. Why run? Instinct, maybe? So he took off running after having not stolen anything. Fell a couple times. Realized that I guess they were closing in on him. Drew his weapon, pointed it at Chow, or at least Chow's son. That's when Chow unholstered his firearm and put one round in Cyrus. So they're saying, oh, he killed him over a water bottle. Well, he didn't. He killed him because the gun was being aimed at his son, or even was being aimed at him. Look, if you're drawing a firearm in the midst of any kind of a confrontation, whether it's a chase or whatever, you draw the firearm, you're not doing it to shoot birds on a high wire. We know why you're drawing it. So Chow had every reason to suspect that if he pulled the trigger, that round was going to go at one of them, he or his son. That's why he drew his weapon and ended the whole confrontation. To be clear, if Rick Chow simply wanted to shoot Cyrus, who was a suspected thief at the time, why chase him 130 yards and then shoot him? A 61-year-old man doesn't run that far in a high adrenaline pursuit just to execute someone in cold blood at the end of the chase. He could have fired right in front of the store. He could have fired in the store. He could have fired 20 feet from the store if his intent all along was to shoot Cyrus. The distance he ran is proof that this was a pursuit that escalated only when the armed threat emerged as Cyrus pulled his gun out. Before the gun was drawn, there was no threat of gunplay at this point. Chow acted as any protective father would have when his son faced imminent danger from a minor illegally carrying a loaded firearm. To be somewhat repetitive, but also clear again, if Chow, as some people that are wanting to riot right now or trying to claim, if his intent all along was to end this kid's life, then why chase him 130 yards towards a crime-ridden ghetto apartment complex where more danger was? Why chase him over there? Why not just pop him in the store, in the parking lot? Why go through all that trouble of chasing him down just to shoot him in an area where there's more danger? We know that's a lie. This incident didn't happen in a vacuum either. Chow's store was under constant siege. Richland County Sheriff's Department records show hundreds of calls for service to the Xpress Mart Shell over the years leading up to 2023 when the shooting took place. Dozens in just a 3-year span, with more than 50 related to shoplifting alone. Calls involved assaults, larceny, motor vehicle theft, vandalism, robbery, burglary. And these people attacking Chow's store look just like Cyrus. We talk about pattern recognition all the time. Chow, Miss Chow, the son, they recognized the pattern. Chow had been repeatedly victimized by people who looked like Cyrus. He had prior justified self-defense incidents at the same location, including a 2018 shooting where he fired on a shoplifter who had attacked him. No charges were filed against Chow. The store sat in a high-crime area where law-abiding business owners faced daily threats from the thugs and hoodlums who lived around there. Hundreds of police responses paint a clear pattern that this wasn't some random paranoia by Chow. It was pattern recognition by a man trying to protect his livelihood and his family in a very tough environment. Carmack-Belton's choices that night fit right into that pattern of illegal activity and escalation, and running didn't help it either. In Chow's mind, he thought the kid stole something. He wouldn't show the wife, Miss Chow, what was in his hoodie when she asked, because he had a gun in there. 14-year-old had an illegal gun on him. Illegal because he's not supposed to be carrying a gun. I'm guessing we'll find out it was stolen also, but we're not even going there right now. So when the kid took off, Chow had to assume that, well, he must have something stolen. I mean, I'm sure it would be racist if he said, I just assumed he had a gun on him. In fact, I'm pretty sure that if Chow thought or knew the kid had a gun on him, he probably wouldn't have chased him. Nobody wants to invite a firearm confrontation. Of course, prosecutors try to frame this as an angry old store owner chasing and killing over nothing. But the jury saw right through all that mess. It was a lie. Chow wasn't shooting a suspected shoplifter. That's not what happened. Again, if that were the case, we would have shot him in the store or in the parking lot when he had probably an easier shot. He fired only after the teen allegedly pointed a loaded gun at his son. The defense emphasized that this is a case about a father seeing an imminent deadly threat and making a split-second decision to protect himself and his family. South Carolina's self-defense laws, including elements of stand your ground and citizens arrest authority, support this. Chasing a suspect is not illegal in South Carolina when reasonable suspicion exists, especially at night for theft. So you understand what I'm saying? Chasing someone is not illegal. Just to be clear. The armed 14-year-old had no business carrying that pistol. His decisions turned a minor interaction into a fatal confrontation. The jury held him accountable for those bad choices by acquitting Chow. Now, of course, you're hearing everybody say, oh, he was a church-going kid. He's probably holding the gun for somebody. He was just getting the water out and counting it. He was curious how much 4 bottles of water weighed. You're going to hear all that mess about how the kid was an angel and Chow was a demon. Chow didn't have a criminal record. Now, Cyrus didn't either. But he was a 14-year-old illegally carrying a firearm. So technically, he was well on his way at just 14 years old of having a criminal record. And statistics back all that up. National data from the FBI Uniform Crime Reports, Bureau of Justice Statistics, and CDC sources provide essential context to this very story. Violent crime is overwhelmingly driven by young males with stark group differences. A 14-year-old black male falls squarely into one of the highest risk categories for violent offending. Black juveniles account for around 34 to 52% of juvenile violent crime arrests in various FBI snapshots, despite being about only 16% of the youth population. Homicide offending rates for black males aged 15 to 24 have historically ranged from 70 to over 200 per 100,000 in peak periods, among the highest in the country. Black Americans, 13 to 14% of the overall population, represent over 50% of known homicide offenders in many years. I know that statistic gets hurtful to a lot of you out there. It is an absolute fact, and it ain't going away, it doesn't appear. By contrast, a 61-year-old Asian male like Rick Chow sits at the statistical opposite end of those crime statistics. Asian males overall, and especially those over 60, have extremely low violent crime rates, often 1 to 2 per 100,000 or lower. Asians consistently show the lowest offending across categories. Violent arrest rates drop 80 to 90% from young adulthood to ages over 60 like Chow. Older Asian men are among the least likely to commit violent acts in the country. Whoopsie daisy. That narrative has fallen apart about the mean, old, evil, violent Chow. Folks, these are group averages, not individual averages. Pattern recognition is a rational thing, especially when you're a store owner in a high crime area. This guy was repeatedly victimized, and he was facing a 14-year-old from a demographic with elevated rates of illegal gun carrying and violent escalation, and he had every reason to act decisively when a gun appeared. He had no reason to think that kid was not going to pull that trigger, regardless of the kid's age. The loaded Taurus next to Carmack-Belton's body backs this up. It didn't fall during the run. It fell after he was shot and holding the gun. It didn't fall out of his pocket. It was pulled out of his pocket. Statistics explain why these incidents recur more frequently with certain demographics. It's not excuses, but explanations for why vigilance matters. The jury got it right. Literally no record of Chow doing anything wrong, other than, over the years, defending the store that constantly got attacked by the same people. Rick Chow was a law-abiding citizen who protected his son from an armed threat in a store plagued by hundreds of police calls and a clear crime pattern by the same demographic constantly. Carmack-Belton's illegal gun and alleged pointing of it, not a water bottle, drove this outcome. The 130-yard chase proves intent was protection, not murder. Now notice the cries and screams and BS from all those saying that the justice system is corrupt. Did you hear any of that when OJ was acquitted? I'm being serious here. These same voices stayed largely silent when O.J. Simpson was acquitted in 1995, despite overwhelming evidence in the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. No widespread protests, no claims of systemic failure when a celebrity walked free. But when a 61-year-old Asian store owner finally has enough, defends his son against armed teen, suddenly the system is broken. Selective outrage reveals the agenda. It's not about consistent justice, but narratives at this point for these people. And of course, we see all the calls for boycotting right now. They're everywhere, all over social media. Oh, we need to boycott Asian stores. In fact, they even say, not just Asian stores, white stores too. It's like, boycott everybody. If you're not black, boycott them. This is stupid. They're not going to boycott anything. Now, they may burn stuff to the ground. They're going to steal stuff. They ain't going to stop shopping at the nail salon, the weave place, these corner stores. Where are they going to get all their stuff? They're not going to stop shopping at any of these places. Now, they're going to talk a big game. They're going to tell everybody as they're doing their thing, yeah, man, we boycotting them. They're not boycotting anything. Not a single one of them will. They will continue to do the same habitual things that they've always done at the same places that they've always done it. It's just all blather. Blah, blah, blah. But I do want to warn you guys out there, those of you that might live on the fringes of some of these communities out there that are talking all this crap right now. Pay attention to the condition of the signs out there. Like you've seen some of the, quote, protest signs out there. Handwritten, bad grammar, misspelled. When you start seeing these signs look more professional, it's going to be more dangerous because that means that the actual protesters are more professional. So as the signs appear more professional, just know that the agitators are more professional, meaning they are getting paid. There will be that same Soros-backed element that will buy the signs, pay for the buses, and ship all these people these areas to agitate and stoke in these communities and get everybody fired up. So just pay very much attention to that. You can see that most of what you're seeing right now with the handwritten signs, somewhat harmless. People talking, people liking to get a little bit of camera time. Good for them. When you start seeing those well-printed and proper grammar on those signs, that's when things are probably going to go south pretty quick. That's when you're going to start seeing the pallets of bricks on the street corners and things like that. Nobody can account for. Folks, we need more honest discussion of age, demographics, family structure, and personal accountability in this country. Parents are non-existent. They only seem to show themselves when something tragic like this happens, but they seem to be kind of invisible, non-existent leading up to this. Law-abiding citizens, including businesses like Chow, they deserve the right to defend themselves without fear of mob justice or media distortion. Facts and self-defense laws prevailed here. Secure communities start with recognizing these realities and holding individuals responsible for their actions. There's no age limit on effing around and finding out. And we're finding that out. Folks, if you like this video, please hit that like button. Comment down below what your thoughts are. I'm sure some people are rattled watching this video and really can't take this type of truth. You came here for truth, you got it. So deal with it. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section down below. Don't forget, guys, if you're looking for a book to educate yourself and to educate the idiots out there who can't think for themselves regarding mass shootings, go to damnliars.net. Again, damnliars.net, and get my brand new book, Damn Liars.
I'm sorry, I thought this was America.
Just hanging around.